It's not about being the Rebbe. The Rebbe was in a whole different stratosphere. He was closer to an angel than a man. The Rebbe pushed himself light years, but everything you do, try to do it a little better by watching him. You don't have to be the greatest person. Be the greatest you.
Beruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talks Chazaq's Tuesday night program with special guests. We have with us tonight, all the way from Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. Welcome, Rabbi. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's beautiful.
It's a privilege and pleasure, and it's always amazing to see the Rabbi. It's been a while since that zchut I had of being in the car together with the Rabbi.
And drive to Stamford, Connecticut.
Yes, Baruch Hashem, Chaz Hashem, and we're going to be speaking about the life and legacy of the Ribnetzer Rebbe Zatzal, the newest Sefer book that Rabbi Nachman Seltzer wrote. K'nainhar, the 47th book that has been published by Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. It's a big honor to have you on Torah Talks. Rabbi, our minhag, our custom is a little bit of background about yourself before we talk about tonight's topic.
Okay, my background. Grew up in Flatbush till I was 9, Borough Park till I was 14. Then we moved to Eretz Yisrael, to a little town in the West Bank called Emmanuel. And then I went to Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and then Yerushalayim, and eventually I went back to America to learn, camp in America, and then back to Eretz Yisrael, the Mir, Yitzchak Berkowitz. And I was in the Mir for 15 years. And along the way, I started writing, and at the same time I was learning, I was also working on books and music and doing all sorts of things. So b'makbil, simultaneously to the learning, there was also the writing, the speaking, the teaching, and basically that's in a nutshell the history.
It seems like the Rabbi has been around a little bit, around the block in different places. But how did it all start with regards to writing? You know, this is the 47th book, like I mentioned before. It didn't happen out of nowhere. It wasn't in the blood. Did it come from Zchut Avod? Your grandparents were writers back in the day. Like, how did it all happen?
There was a lot of talent in the family. I have to give credit to the grandparents, and the parents. Baruch Hashem. I always liked writing. I was good at it when I was a kid. I won creative writing awards, and as I got older, I really tried. I would read everything I could get my hands on. All the Jewish books, I knew all the Jewish books, and I started feeling like I really should do this myself. I could do this. Maybe I could do this better. You know, like I'm feeling the confidence of youth. Go for it. So people would be like, "Yeah, sure you can. Sure you can do it better." Anyways, one day when I was 23 years old, I said to my mother-in-law, it was Motzei Shabbos. I was at my in-laws' house. I said to her, I want to write a book. So she said, okay. She gave me a pad of paper and a pen and said, go for it. And I sat down and I wrote my first 4 pages of the first book, which we called The Edge. Today it's a movie. Edge? The Edge.
What's that about?
The book is about it was a story that a friend of mine, it could be you know him, Simon Nissim. You know Simon Nissim?
Sounds so familiar.
Simon Nissim. He's married to Vicky. Anyway, so Vicky's good friends with Janine. Yaakov's wife. Yaakov sang at the Chasana for free back in the day. They were good friends.
Lucky.
Back in the day. Anyway, so Simon's from England. He was learning about Ribnetzer Rebbe with me. And one day he told me a story about a friend of his. And I said the story is so incredible that I should do a fictionalized version of it based on a true story. That became The Edge. It's about a person who finds out he's a mamzer. He's an illegitimate Jew, not a kosher Jew. And it's an amazing story. And so I couldn't write the real story exactly the way it was. I had to change certain details, but it's based on the true story. And eventually it was made into a movie by Baruch Perlowitz, first real movie he made. It was a very successful Jewish film. And so that was the first book. And that's it. From there, Baruch Hashem, didn't look back. We just kept on going.
So this was when you were 23 years old. So the last 3 years, you put together 47 years, but you're only 26, right, Rabbi? But very, very impressive.
You're 26, I'm 26.
Very, very impressive. So the first book was The Edge, and the most recent book, the latest book, is the Ribnetzer Rebbe Zatzal. How did that all come along? Was there any connection?
So that came along because of Yitzhak David Grossman had a book called
Migdal
Living
or
Legend. Living
Migdal M.
Legend. Okay, so years
We
and
had this.
years ago, I wanted to write a book about Yitzhak David, but I didn't know how to reach him. And so eventually I put that on the side. But then I wrote a book about Ribnetzer Youngreis. And that led to a book about Yisrael Gelus called Our Man in Jerusalem. And that led to a book called The Insider about Yisrael Katzover. And that led to a book called Living Legend, because each of these people knew the next person. Yisrael Katzover called Rabbi Grossman, got through to him immediately. Rabbi Grossman was interested in the project, and we became good friends. So this book, Living Legend, is a very, very popular book. And a person read this book, originally from Queens, actually. He read this book. Can't say who he is. Read this book, and he loved the book. And one of the things he loved about it was the part about the Ribnetzer Rebbe. Ribnetzer Rebbe actually spent time at Migdal Or for Shabbos. He went there many, many years ago when he came to Eretz Yisrael after leaving Russia. And this person that we're not going to say his name, I'm just going to give a little hint. It has to do with a lion. That's the only hint I'm going to give. This person, he became close to Rav Grossman. He reached out to people who knew him, and Rav Grossman came to his house. He doesn't live in Queens anymore. And Rav Grossman, they became close, developed a relationship. And he had an idea. He wanted to do something for the Ribnetzer Rebbe. He didn't have any children. So he said, I want to write a book about the Ribnetzer Rebbe. There are other books, but I want to do one with Art Scroll. And he wanted me to be the writer. And he asked Rabbi Grossman to call me, to ask me to do this. And so one day, Rabbi Grossman called me one Thursday afternoon. I was shopping for Shabbos, and the phone rang, and it said, Rabbi Grossman, Rabbi Yitzchak David. And he said, Rabbi Nachman, I want you to write a book. Somebody wants you to write a book about the Ribnetzer Rebbe. So that's how it started.
Wow.
And Baruch Hashem. So it all began. So it's all part of, it's a long chain of events. But the last part of it comes from Rabbi Yitzchak David Grossman. The Galglins Chusay Zakai.
Amazing. I want to mention one thing about Rabbi Yitzchak David. We had the schut, the merit to have the rabbi be a featured speaker at a big Chazaq event. And the amount of people that constantly, this was many years ago, constantly tell me the inspiration that he got from the Rav is unbelievable. And then recently I was in Eretz Yisrael with a group of Balabatim. We went to many Gedolim, many Rabbanim. It was very, very inspiring. But one of the main guys told me that the biggest effect that he had of being in Eretz Yisrael was when we had the schut, the merit to go to Migdal Or, Migdal Emek, to meet with Rabbi Grossman, and the work that they do over there is just tremendous. It's amazing. And the fact that the Rabbi Grossman had a kasher with the Ribnetzer Rebbe Zatzal, and the fact that he encouraged you to write this ever is very, very amazing. Now, the books are already in the Stories of Torah Understand, right? It just came out.
Yeah.
It just came out. If a person doesn't have a book, like, for example, myself, not yet. Okay, my wife is a big fan of Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. I told it to Rabbi before offline. I'm going to say it in public. And she's in the middle of reading the Zera Simcha. Baruch Hashem, she has a chavrusa shaf with it. She learns with a partner. And I want to get the book about the Ribnetzer Rebbe, but I want to get a little bit of a glimpse or a highlight. What would it be, Rabbi Nachman Seltzer, from within this?
So first of all, the book is called the Ribnetzer. I think there are other books called the Ribnetzer Rebbe. This is called the Ribnetzer.
The Ribnetzer, published by Art Scroll.
That's right. Not to confuse it. There's so many beautiful elements. Okay, so the Ribnetzer Rebbe was a tzaddik. He was on a whole different level. He wasn't like from this world, b'chlal. He was like a throwback to the Baal Shem Tov's time. He would have been at home in the Baal Shem Tov circle. That's the type of avodas Hashem that the Ribnetzer Rebbe did. He lived in Russia. In Russia, it's freezing cold in the winter. The Ribnetzer Rebbe toveled in the mikveh every day, a few hundred times.
Wow.
He would break the ice in the river in his hometown or any other town he was visiting to bring chizuk to Yidden as a mayil or other mitzvahs. And he would go down to the river, break the ice, go into the river, do his 300 plus tefillas, and sometimes the ice would close up on top of his head. Or he would lose track of the hole, and then he would have to get out. So sometimes he'd be able to break through. Sometimes he would daven to Hashem, and he'd find himself on top of on dry land. There were many, many miracles, to the point where the Goyim understood. There were miracles with the KGB helping him go to mikveh. There were miracles with the Nazis escorting him to mikvah, understanding that this is a person you help.
Wow.
And that's just one element. And when the Rebbe would come out, one time, there were kids in the village understood that, oh, look, this rabbi, he goes to mikvah in the freezing, he breaks the ice, he goes to mikvah, and he comes out, and they understood that if a person, let's say, he would come out, he didn't look at women. So if a woman would pass by, he would go back to mikvah, he would go back in again. So these girls would come as a fun. They were young girls. They would come and play a game. They would stand in front of him when he came out. So in the beginning, he went back in the mikvah. But he saw that they're having fun. They're having a lot of fun. This old Jew, they don't understand what he was going. They came and they did this to him. One day he came out of the river. He filled up shoes with freezing cold water. And in front of their eyes, when they came and stood in front of him, he poured freezing cold water all over his shoes in front of them. It's like as if he went to mikvah again. After they saw that, they never did it again. That's just one example of the type of avodas Hashem, of service to God that the Ribnetzer did. But that's just one thing. That's just one little point. And he was fighting the KGB. He was walking through forests. He was the Moyo. He would go traveling. Somebody said that he got into one time he needed to drive to somewhere far away. And the Rebbe's like, how do I get there? And the Rebbe said, you have a car in your backyard. The guy said, the car doesn't have, I haven't used it in years. The Rebbe said, don't worry. They get in the car and they drives for hours. They come back, no problem. The guy he said, you know what? If I haven't driven this car many, many years, but if I already drove it, let me check to see what's happening. He opens up the car, the hood, there's no engine.
Wow.
But that's in Russia. But I could tell you, Reb Herschel Weber, who's the founder of Hatzalah in America, he lives in Williamsburg, he told me personally that he was in a bungalow colony driving, and the Rebbe wanted him to drive him somewhere late one Motzei Shabbos. He ran out of gas. He said, Rebbe, there's no gas in the car. The Rebbe said, don't worry about it. The Rebbe said, drive. They drove. No gas. They got to where they needed to get to. After that, the car stopped, and that was the end of the story.
Wow.
And this, I tell you, Herschel Weber told me, this is from a Herschel, personal. This is the Rebbe, he was a gabbai from the Rebbe. This is one person away. He was there with the Rebbe. He was the Rebbe's man for a while.
Unbelievable. Talking about no gas in the for the car, whenever that happens, it goes to E, right? E. When I ask people what does it mean, they say empty. I always tell them no, it means emuna. But all seriously, that's crazy stories that they would say. That's amazing. Now there's a complaint that people have that when you read these books, it's all about mitzvahs and miracles, and this happens and that happened. If there would be something that we could take for the average person, a lesson that we could take home. Right now, we are behind us. We have Rosh Hashanah, and the time of this recording, Yom Kippur as well. We have Sukkot coming ahead. One lesson that we could take from the Ribnetzer Rebbe, of course, the Misud Nefesh and going above and beyond to do mitzvot. Yes, if that would anything stick out, Rabbi Nachman Seltzer.
First, every page is a lesson. I'll tell you, it's not about being the Rebbe. You will not be able to be the Rebbe. Okay, the Rebbe was in a whole different stratosphere. No, it's just not reality. He was closer to an angel than a man. So it's not like that. But when you go through the book, I describe the Rebbe's way he served Hashem, for what he did, his avodah, how he davened, how he kriyas Torah in the shul, how he ate, how he made brachas, how he set sukkah, Shabbos, fish, the tish, the ben adam chaveroi, the ben adam lamakom, between how he related to fellow Jews. Look, I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
Meaning like this. My point was that you could take from this book everything you do, try to do it a little better by watching him. Take that idea that the Rebbe pushed himself 1,000 years away from this world, light years. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking me to do that. That's not where we are. But we can all push ourselves a little bit, do a mitzvah a little more, daven with a little more kavanah, be makbid on Kriyas Torah more, be makbid on what we eat more and how we eat. Meaning that's a huge lesson. You don't have to be the greatest person. Be the greatest you. Be the greatest you. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen were compared to one another. How can we compare Moshe and Aaron? Moshe was the greatest. Aaron was not as great as Moshe, says our Moshe Feinstein, because without Aaron HaKohen was the greatest Aaron HaKohen. So therefore, he's like the greatest Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was the greatest him. So if you're the greatest you, then you're like Moshe Rabbeinu.
100%.
That's what we can learn from the Ribnetzer. But I will tell you, just if talking about how he was interpersonal relationships. Rabbi Weber told me he was once in the house and there was a person who came, a Russian Jew who came, and he was upset about something. And he started yelling. He wants to see the Rebbe, but the Rebbe was eating lunch. So they said to Mordechai ben David, and Reb Herschel said, "You gotta wait."
Mordechai ben David, the famous singer,
was a Gabbai also.
Really?
For a few years. Yes. Now, Mordechai ben David has something called the Rebbe's Niggin. He sings it. It was the Rebbe's Niggin. Oh, he put it out. And that's Mordechai ben David singing the Rebbe's Niggin. Anyway, so this guy doesn't want to go away. He's not taking no for an answer. He starts banging on the door. They're like, "Go away. Let the Rebbe eat lunch." The guy doesn't go away. He broke down the door.
Wow.
He literally broke down the door. And the Rebbe said, "What's going on?" They said, "This guy wants to see the Rebbe, but he's not taking no." And he broke down the door. They were very mad at him. The Rebbe said, come in. He lets him in. He says, "What'd you do?" He said, "I have to see the Rebbe. So I broke down the door." The Rebbe said, "You did well. You did good." I'm just saying, this is an example. Every paragraph is an example for you to take and apply to your life as far as you can go.
How long was this book in the works, Rabbi Seltzer?
The last half a year, I would say, I was involved with it on some level.
Unbelievable. Give us a little bit of a background. What it takes to put together. Is it a biography?
It's his life. Yes.
The life. So what does it take to put together? Tell us a little bit in the day of Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. Is it the phone
You're just
call?
asking two separate things. You want to know how I put together the book or the day and night in Nachman Seltzer?
Well, both.
The day and Nachman Seltzer. Basically, if I'm not learning with my chavrusa, or shiurim, or whatever, or not teaching, then I'm writing. Okay, these are the meaning. If I'm not, my default setting is writing. That's what I do. When I'm not doing something else, that's what I'm doing. Okay, that's number one. That's my day. Just
now we know how you accomplished to write so many sfarim.
I'll tell you something. So a friend of mine who runs renewal, one of the people who runs renewal. So we were talking once, and he said, I did a story a few times about renewal. So he says to me, how do you do this? He said, how do you put out? I said, I don't know. So then afterwards he says, I want to send you something on WhatsApp. I said, I don't have WhatsApp. He goes, no, now I know.
Very, very powerful. Everybody hear that? Keeps a person
with a phone like this, that's how we can do it. That's how we can do it. You get a phone like that, then you can do it. Anyway, so how did this work? So basically, I reached out to as many people as I could who knew the Rebbe. I got leads from different places. People actually knew the Rebbe. Russians who knew the Rebbe back in Russia. I spoke to people who knew the Rebbe from all those years ago. I spoke to people in Bnei Brak who knew the Rebbe. I spoke to people in Yerushalayim who knew the Rebbe. Then I spoke a lot to his Gabbai, his main Gabbai. So Moshe Tzvi Berkowitz, the Mashbak, Moshe Spakoidesh. And he knew him from when he was a young bacher for the rest of his life. He knew the Rebbe. For the rest of the Rebbe's life. He met the Rebbe in America, and he was the Rebbe. He was the longest Gabbai. I spoke to him many times. I spoke to his son, his second Rebbe's son-in-law, Matas Cohen from Muncie. And I also got tremendous amounts of information from people who knew other Gabbai. And slowly but surely, it started coming together. And a lot of research, a lot of listening to recordings, and looking up things and trying to find articles and leads. And eventually it came together. It was a big avodah.
So can you tell us, you mentioned about one of the Gabbaim that knew the Rebbe as a young bacher, and then now until the end of his life. Can you tell us about the Rebbe's upbringing?
The Rebbe's upbringing. The Rebbe's parents died when he was very young. He was very close to the Stefan Rebbe in Europe. He adopted him more or less. He became his father. He said, you're my he called him his neshama. He was his guy. He said, you're like the biggest haicha, you're the holiest uplifted person. He said he picked him out of all his people. He made it clear he was his successor, and
So
that's how he
how did it
grew up.
happen from Stefanich to Ribnitz?
I'm saying his father was a follower of Stefanesh, and
Mm.
he spent a lot of time there. Stefanesh. Eventually, he lived with the Rebbe, and he spent as a youngster. He devoted himself to learning mamish day and night. It was
This is
tremendous
in Russia.
in Russia, Moldava. There's a Russia, Carpathian Mountains, and he got older and got older. He got married to a very chashva, the daughter of a very important, like a dayan or a rav, and demanded a lot from him, tested him, and he knew he really was tremendous tam chacham, and then he spent a lot of time learning. But as the time passed in Russia, it was Stalin Russia, and the Jewish people needed chizuk, and he was unofficial. He didn't call himself a rebbe. He didn't call himself a rabbi. Chaim Zanvil. They called him Chaim Zanvil. That's what they knew him as. They called him Chaim Zanvil, and he was their spiritual guide and leader. And he stayed in Russia and took care of them. And he would walk through the forest and talk about the wolves and the white bears that even he was scared of.
Wow.
And seeing those eyes in the darkness and the malachim that would walk with him as he went through the forest with his Misharis Avram Markovich, whose daughter I spoke to.
Wow.
And tremendous miracles. The KGB coming to his house and looking for him and not seeing him. Just incredible miracles. But his Mesiras Nefesh was off the charts. Mesiras Nefesh. On every level. And in every mitzvah. And he lived that way until eventually he left Russia, went to Eretz Yisrael. He stayed there for a few years, for not so long, very short actually. I think a year and a half, something like that. And then he went to America. He stayed in America. He did visit Eretz Yisrael. He went a lot of places. Gabayim took him different places. Sometimes because they wanted him to be able to rest and not have so many people coming to see him. Wherever he went, really, people found out about it. He was a legend. People always tracked him down and wanted brachas from him. Give me a bracha. He would say when a guy would come to his house and come to the tish, and they would beg the Rebbe for a bracha for his son. He would give him a bone and say, "Du hast a bain. You have a son, a bain. A bone in Yiddish is a bain. It's a play on words. Du hast a bain." Or he would say, he would give him a bite of chicken. He would say, "Du hast a boss." A boss in Yiddish is a bite. And they would have a boy or they would have a girl. And it's amazing things. People came to his tish, and the Rebbe always knew. If they would say, let's say somebody, and he would say, "Before you come to my minyan, you have to go to mikvah." But if a person didn't go, he would know, and he wouldn't want to shake the hand. And there was no fooling him. He always knew. There was no games. Let's say that once in Shul and Seagate, they said, "Rebbe, we need a Levi." And the Rebbe was like, "There is a Levi." Like, there's no Levi in Shul. He went through the whole Shul. There's no Levi. He says, "Go to the side door. Open the side door. There's a guy waiting in the side door." He says, "Are you a Levi?" "Yes." The Rebbe knew he was there. He's coming. He knew he was he was operating on a different level. And as Tigger Chatzos, Rabbi, it's Tigger Chatzos. What an avodah. He was in a tiny room with hundreds of candles and ashes on his head and sackcloth bent over, double. And he would daven for hours and hours and cry until the tears mixed with the ashes and the floor was covered with black soot. And it was hot and almost fire would break out.
Godless greatness. So the Rav lived in Seagate?
He lived in Seagate. He lived in Borough Park. He lived he was in a number of places. He first came. He was in Borough Park mainly for a long time. In Borough Park, and then he was in LA for a while, in Seagate for a while, but mainly Borough Park.
If I'm not mistaken, the burial spot is in Muncie.
At the end of his life. The end of his life, he was in Muncie. That was the end of his life.
It's a known thing by the Yahrzeit. When's the Yahrzeit? It just passed.
Coming up right after Sukkot.
Right? Oh, wow.
Namish coming up.
It's a big thing with what I remember. I didn't have the
20,000 people came last year.
Wow.
I think. Yeah, this year it's going to be even more. It's going to be even more.
What's the date of the Yahrzeit? Do you know offhand?
You can look it up 1 second. I'll tell you.
Yeah, sure.
I'll tell you his Yahrzeit right now.
I'm guessing you just pulled out the book.
I pulled it out right now.
Okay, we want to see the cover.
I'll show you. Second.
For all those that are on the podcast and can watch, we'll make sure you get the art scroll.
24th of Tishrei.
24th of Tishri.
Isru Chag Sukkos.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's
Isru Chag Sukkos, the Rebbe passed away, 1995.
unbelievable.
This is the cover.
Wow. Godless. Greatness. How about descendants, Rabbi?
What's that?
Children, grandchildren of the Rabbi?
Oh, no, the Rebbe didn't have any children.
Wow.
That's why the person who came to me, one of the reasons he was so motivated to do this, because the Rebbe said, sometimes there was a time everyone came to the Rebbe for brachas. One time the Rebbe started crying, and he said, "You all come to me to ask me. To now is an Eis Ratzon, please daven for me to have a child." And he was talking, he married somebody much younger than him. His second wife was decades younger than him. He hoped to have a child. Didn't have a child with her. Wow. So this person said, the Rebbe said, please, tell the world about me. Share the stories. The Rebbe wanted people to know. That was one of the reasons why the donor was so, he felt weighing it down on him, that it has to be done. He felt it was a mission. He felt it was imperative that the Rebbe should have a book that he wanted a book that the Rebbe would be proud of. And he mamish felt it was very important that this should happen. And also, you should know, today, there's a big school in Monsey with mamish hundreds and hundreds of children. It's the Ribnetzer Rebbe. And that's run by people from his family. And it's actually located on this place where the house he lived in Monsey. Wow. And he said one day this will be a huge Jewish neighborhood, when it wasn't. And he said it will be a very big Jewish neighborhood. But that's another whole story that's in the book also, how that happened. So everything's a story with the Rebbe.
I want to tell you, Rabbi Nachman Seltzer, I feel the energy through the screen of the Rabbi, the way you're giving it over. I could just imagine just reading the book, how much chizuk, how much inspiration one could get about Misirut Nefesh and giving up of yourself for others and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for God and for Hashem. Enjoying every single minute. We have a minhag, we have a custom in Torah Talks, which is a final message, that a takeaway, something that Klal Yisrael, everyone that's watching and listening, could take with them as something, whether it's from the Ribnetzer Rebbe, whether it's from your other many Sfarim books, whether it's from the Shirim and the classes. Right before
final message. The final message for Klal Yisrael. Okay, the final message. Today's message, I think, is this. You need to remember that you're a great person. Okay? Every year, I'll tell you what I mean. What do I mean? There's about 16 million Yidden in the world right now. About, give or take, a few 100,000. Out of those 16 million, there are about 2 million, give or take, that are from. Does that make sense? Is that the right number? 3 million? Something like that. Between 2 and 3 million, right?
Right.
Okay. You're the curious guy. You know the numbers. Between 2 and 3 million who are religious. Out of the 2 or 3 million that are religious, I would say, again, correct me if I'm wrong, probably 1.5 million of them are really religious. Out of the 1.5 million that are really from, I would say, 800,000 learn Torah on a daily basis. Maybe 1 million learn Torah. So that means if you're listening to this, you're one of the people who are part of the cream of humanity. Because if you think about it, you are part of the 1 million people who learn Torah every day, every week. You devote yourself to Torah mitzvahs. That's a 0 point whatever percentage of the world's population. You are from the royal family, one of the few people actually doing what Hashem wants in this world. So when I say you need to feel good about yourself, I really mean it, because you're mamish from the few, the proud. You're the one doing the mission. You're doing what Hashem wants. When Hashem created the world, they said to Malachim, should I create humans? He had you in mind because you're doing what he wants from the world. He wants people to keep the Torah. You're one of those few people who are doing that. Do you understand how great that is? I'm not flattering you. I'm telling you how it is. You are actually great. Let's say you're a person who works as a jeweler or as a barber, or you have a restaurant, or you work as whatever you work. You're a mashgiach. You work in construction. You come every day and you learn an hour. You listen to shiurim from the rabbi. You try your best and you have a kosher home and you're doing mitzvot and you're doing everything you need to do and you have shalom bayit in your house. You understand you're a prince. You're a prince. Can you be better? We can all be better. But you're a prince of a Jew and you need to feel that. You got to feel that going into Sukkot, going into the rest of the year. You need to feel that you are a prince doing the Ratzon Hashem, doing what Hashem wants from you. You need to be proud of that. You need to be proud. You should feel good about yourself. Look at me. Look, I was zoiche. I merited to be one of the people doing what Hashem wants in this world. So feel proud, my friend. Stand straight. Stand tall. You're a lucky man. Ashrecha.
Rabbi Nachman Seltzer, wow, what a powerful final message! What an amazing Torah talk! I personally just got so much chizuk, so much inspiration from that message, and we are very thankful to Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. So busy, that has so much going on. He made the time to come join us on the Chazaq Torah Talks. A special thank you to our dear friend Rabbi Tzvi Balsky for making the quote-unquote shidduch, having the rabbi on the program. We really appreciate it. Chazaq Torah Talks Tuesday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with special guests, chazaq.org/live. Special shout out and thank you to Torah Time and all the many podcast players that are hosting our podcast. Please not only enjoy, but please share as well to family and friends and neighbors about the life and legacy of the Ribnetzer Rebbe with Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. And the shout out to dailygiving.org. $1 a day really goes a very far way. They're doing amazing work for Klal Yisrael, so many great causes. And once again, I want to thank Rabbi Nachman Seltzer. Rabbi, thank you on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael.
Thank you.
For all your amazing work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and send my best regards to Ovadia Yosef.
My son. Okay, yes. I'm going to make sure he watches this part. But really appreciate it. And Yagdal Torah and wishing everyone a Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
And the Sarot Tavot.